Alright, so this is going to be part 9 to What If Deku Had All for One. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10. Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, no hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so before we actually get into the What If, I would like to say, like, yes, it's been a while since I did this series, and don't worry, I'm still going to do this series and Prototype since they're my farthest along series. It's just going to take some time, right? Because I gotta watch the rest of season 3, and then after season 3, I'm probably gonna stop it, and it's gonna be like a kind of like a finale after that until season 4 is like completely done, right? So yeah, that's basically what I'm gonna do. And yeah, it just takes me some time to actually get around to rewatch the anime, because there's a lot of stuff I gotta do, right? I have school, and I just, in my free time, I usually just watch the anime, and sometimes it just gets boring to rewatch stuff I already watched, right? Even though I don't remember every single part, which I would need to make these kind of what ifs. So I hope you understand. And yeah, so in the last part I asked you guys, who from class 1A should get, or I just said in general, who should get the kind of quirk of magnetism. And there's a lot of different questions. There's a lot of like different people you guys suggested, and we're not gonna give it to Coda because I think he would be too young, and that might mess him up. Because I don't think he'd be strong enough to withstand that quirk. Because when All For One gives someone a quirk, if they are not strong enough to hold or wield that quirk, then they go mentally insane and things like that, right? So in this one, a lot of people said Jiro, and I got a comment talking about how the classmates of 1A wouldn't really see that as fair, and it kind of just seems like Deku would just give it to her just because they were dating. So I'm gonna make it a little bit different. I'm gonna say that it's gonna be part of their training. So Deku would basically, what he would do is he would hide something in the woods, right? Somewhere random, right? And it'd be, it could be far or really near, since he has teleportation. And he would tell the class, like, if you want, this magnetism quirk, then you need to go and fetch this item, and you guys can fight for it, right? So it would be kind of a search and like, a scavenger hunt kind of. Not really, since it's only one object, and it would help with their kind of, combat, because they're gonna literally like fight over it, right? So yeah. So I don't think everyone in class 1A would go and try to get it. I think that a few of the students would, but not everyone. I think some would be content with just having their own kind of quirk and things like that. So in the meantime, Deku would help the other students who didn't go and get him, went to like go get it. So he would basically, this would be the second day of training, by the way. So he would help Todoroki with his flames, right? Just like in a previous part where I talked about his internship, they would kind of focus on making fire weapons, just how like Endeavor can make his like javelin. I believe I said in the kind of intern or the Stain arc, I said that he could make like a fire bow or something to that effect. So this is kind of the point where Deku kind of helps him master that ability, and this is when Todoroki would kind of learn how to make like a bow and arrow, but like be able to shoot more than one arrow, right? Shoot multiple arrows at a time. So I think that's where he would learn this ability from. And yeah, the next person that Deku would help would be Kaminari. Since Deku has Black Lightning, he would kind of teach Kaminari different ways of using his electricity and how to make it focus better, so he wouldn't fry his brain when he overcharged, right? So that's how he would kind of help Kaminari. So the people I would say that would actually go and try to find this object, or I guess this ticket, I guess, if you will, that Deku hid in the forest, I think it would be Zero, the person with the tape arms, Momo, Ida, Ojiro, and maybe Jiro, and then who else? I think, wasn't there like there was another there was like another, what's it called, student in class 1A called Koda. I remember, I think the animal voice guy, wasn't his name Koda as well, which is kind of weird. Yeah, his name is Koda as well. I just looked it up. So yeah, when I say that, I guess I could call him Koji. I think that's his first or his last name, so we'll call him Koji so we don't confuse with the other Koda. So I guess Koji would go as well, and they would kind of go around the forest. Ida, I think, would be the first. I think Momo would be the first one, because she could make a bunch of different gadgets to help look for the kind of item, right? And I think Aizawa would help Deku and kind of set this up in the other teachers. And as this, like, as she finds it, right, let's say it's like this kind of metal capsule that's like kind of in the ground, that's around 4 inches by 4 inches, right? It's like a cube. And as it's like taken out of the ground, these alarms would go off loud enough for everyone in that kind of area to notice. So Ida and the rest of the kind of class 1A that decided to go, they would kind of have this free-for-all battle there, to kind of fight over who would get the kind of quirk. And right, this is all in like good fun, really, to a certain extent, because they all want to be their like best versions of themselves, and they think they could do this with a second quirk. So in this fight, it's kind of difficult to say who would win, I guess, because it is a free-for-all. I don't think Koda would win, because I think his voice would be drowned out by the noise that Jiro could make, and Ida's the fastest one there, and Momo's very versatile in her kind of different things that she can make, while Ojiro is very strong with his tail and is a master of martial arts. I don't think I'm missing anyone. I think I said all those. So in this fight, I think Momo would kind of defend herself by making those cannons, right? And this would kind of exhaust her because it's a very large object. And this is when Jiro would use her kind of not headphones, so speakers that she has on her like boots, to kind of blast everyone, right? And I don't think, like I said before, I don't think Koda would win this fight, so I think he'd be out immediately. And I think that Ida would be fast enough to kind of get around Jiro, but I think Ojiro would kind of fight off Ida a bit. So I think eventually Momo would be able to kind of shoot Jiro, and she would shoot that kind of what's it called, that stuff that she used in the movie to kind of stop the robots. Well, basically she would kind of use the same thing, and this would kind of cover up her speakers and she wouldn't be able to use them. So I think at this point Jiro would be out of the fight, and a fight against Ojiro and Ida would be hard to predict, since both of them are very strong. So I think using his reciprocal burst, I think that Ida would be able to win that kind of fight, being so much faster and being able to land a kind of harder kick onto Ojiro, but the fight would be very difficult on both sides, since Ojiro uses a kind of fighting style that's unique to him, or unique to people who have tails, I guess, since not many people in My Hero have tails. So the next fight would be against what's it called, Momo and Ida. And I think in this one, I think that Ida wouldn't really want to fight her because he doesn't want to like hurt her, due to like how chivalrous Ida would be and how like old-fashioned he would be. I think that he would just take it and just run as fast as he can. So I don't think that Momo would have too much to do, because not only did she have to make that giant cannon, but she also had to make the ammo and things like that. And this is kind of before she kind of fully did her kind of training, so she wouldn't be as used to doing things like this. So I think at this point, I guess it'd be a little bit after some training, so that kind of training beforehand would have drained her a little bit also. So I would say that Ida actually wins this and gets the second quirk of magnetism. This would, from what the comment told me, this would let him be able to kind of have heavier armor that's more protective, and still be it where he is light enough and mobile enough to kind of continue to, or he would still have that mobility while having stronger and heavier armor, because he would simultaneously use his magnetism to kind of make it lighter on himself. So yeah. So we get to the point where I don't think there's anyone else really that at this point that that Deku could help in their like quirk training. Oh yeah, I forgot Zero was part of the fight. Yeah, I don't think Zero would win either. Let's just say he wasn't part of it. And that kind of opportunity to get the quirk was open to everyone, even to those who failed the students versus teachers kind of thing. So people like I think it was Kaminari, Kirishima, people like him would be able to join, but he decided not to. So yeah, Ida would get it. So we would get later into the day around sunset, and this is when they're kind of making that food for themselves, right? These students making their own food. So he would still have that kind of talk with Todoroki, or Deku would, about how he wants to convince Koda, the small child, not the student in class 1A. He basically wanted to, he was talking to him about how he wants to show that heroes are a good thing, and he doesn't know how to convince him. So Todoroki just says that, actions speak louder than words, but if you're going to use words, it better be some pretty powerful ones, right? And Deku thinks of this, and he's wondering what he could do. So as he's done making the food, he notices that Koda is not there. So he decides to bring him a plate to this kind of mountain that Koda's always at, after some time looking for him. So he would basically say oh, here's some food, but he would also ask him about how why he hates heroes, and he wouldn't tell him much. He would basically tell him if they weren't heroes and they would still be alive and things like that. And he's referring to his parents who are dead because of Muscular, right? So seeing that he can't really change his mind, Deku would just leave the plate there and just kind of leave on his way, right? So later on, we would get to the point where they're doing that kind of test of courage, where they're having everyone kind of go into the forest and see who could be brave, right? And they would do that kind of draw, right, to see who would get into pairs. And in this one, Deku would still be alone. And yeah, so Momo and the rest, the same pairs would still go with each other, right? So after a while of the pairs going into the forest, this is when I think it's Pixie Bob starts floating and goes into the forest, and she's like, well, what's happening? And this is actually this is the League of Villains who actually start invading. I forgot who it was, but it's basically the guy who also has magnetism, or it's a different kind of magnetism. So yeah, he would have like his like weapon above Pixie Bob threatening to kill her. And this is when Mandolin, or yeah, not Mandolin, yeah, Mandolin would basically say, I think that's her name, but basically she would tell Deku about Koda and where he's at, and Deku just says, alright, I'm gonna go and get him. And this is where he would basically teleport to where Koda would be at. And this is when he's at that fight. And in this one, I'm gonna keep it the same villain. Muscular is actually gonna be the same person who comes, but he's gonna have kind of a similar quirk that makes him a lot stronger physically. So yeah, when Deku gets there, he sees this like cloaked figure, right, wearing a mask, and he's about to hit this kid, and this is when he's about to hit Koda, and this is when he takes him out of the hit, right, out of the kind of, yeah. So this masked figure would basically say that, oh, I know you. And Deku would be like, how do you know me? Like, he's like, you're the one who took my quirk. And this is when he would remove his mask, and he would reveal himself to be Muscular. And Deku, at this point, is kind of feeling scared, right? Muscular was one of the first people that he took his quirk away from, right? And imagine being like a small child, and you see this kind of muscular, scary, like, individual that's tied up, but he's still like, trying to escape. And the police tell you, oh, go ahead and like, you gotta touch this guy and you gotta look him in the eyes, right? Imagine being that kind of small kid in that situation, right? Having those very hateful eyes looking at you, right? So I think Deku would kind of have this memory kind of, how would you call it? It would kind of be repressed in a way. And as he's like talking to Muscular, this is when he remembers all that happened to him as a young kid. And, this is when Muscular would try to rush him, right? And Deku would obviously use his muscle augmentation quirk that he got from Muscular to protect himself, right? And in his mind, he's kind of like, he's not fighting back much because he's still remembering what happened that day, and it's really freaking him out. But he's not really taking much damage because of the shock absorption, and any damage that he would take would be regenerated because of his regeneration quirk. So Muscular's like, he's like, what are you doing? Aren't you gonna fight? And he would kind of belittle Deku for not fighting and call him like a brat and like a baby for doing this. And this is when Koda's like, Koda would be kind of, he would be confused on what's happening because Deku's not doing anything. And this is when Muscular would like, how about I kill this kid? Maybe you'll fight me then. And before, as he's going to go for Koda, this is when Deku kind of snaps out of it, right? And punches Muscular into the wall of the mountain. And he'd be like, that's, Muscular would then say, that's the spirit kid. And he would retaliate by rushing back at Deku. So Deku would start using 100% of his quirk of Muscular because typically he doesn't use the bottom part of Muscular's quirk, just how like Muscular didn't during the first part of the fight. So they're like kind of hitting blow for blow, but Muscular's taking more damage since Deku has shock absorption, and Deku would quickly learn his fighting style because of his Taskmaster quirk, so he'd be able to dodge that pretty quickly. And to kind of make this fight faster, he would basically grab onto Muscular's like kind of head or face and basically do a large voltage directly at him. This would kind of like knock him out, and Deku would kind of throw him to the side of the wall of the mountain, and he would basically take Koda and try to give it to Aizawa to keep him safe, right? As he's going to kind of go after the other villains that are there. So I think in this one, the League of Villains, they're basically trying to kill as many students, or I guess not trying to kill, they're trying to get Deku, right? Because he has a very similar quirk for All For One. So they're basically trying to either kill him or capture him, and then in the process try to do as much damage as possible to UA and their students, right? So he would bring Koda halfway to Aizawa because Aizawa would be running that way, and obviously Deku, Muscular would have told him the kind of plans, just how he does in the anime, but instead of about Bakugo, it's actually about Deku himself. So he would run back to Mandolin and Tiger where they're fighting, and she would basically tell her that they're kind of after him. So she would relay this message to them, to the other class or the other students, and Deku would try to go around to help the other students. So the first people that he would find, he would be kind of teleporting to different parts, and he would get to a specific part of the forest, and this is where Dark Shadow would take him down of the air. And as he's like being like, after he gets knocked down, this is when Shoji would tell him that after seeing him get hurt, Dark Shadow and Tokiyami kind of went berserk, right? So he basically tells him he just tells him what happened. So Deku is thinking like, alright, let me kind of suppress him since he has fire. So that's basically what he would do. He would like suppress him using his fire and his fire clones, right? And he would have a lot of control over his fire, and he has a kind of ability to slow down time. So this would make it very easy for him to slow down time and then just cover Dark Shadow with a lot of light. So this would calm him down to the point where he would be stable again, and Deku would kind of take both of them to kind of find other students. And this is when he goes and teleports and he finds Bakugo and Todoroki. And the reason why he would be able to see this is because he would do what he usually does and just kind of jump as high as he can, and he would look around using his stop time to kind of look around. Not stop time, but slow down time. And he would basically see Moonfish, I believe that's his name, and because he'd be like giant, right? Or he'd be really high in the air since he uses like his metal teeth. So he would see where it's at, and he would take Tokiyami and what's it called? Shoji with him to kind of take him, right? So the fight against Moonfish would be pretty easy. One punch could probably take him out since Tokiyami was able to do that with a raged Dark Shadow. So what Deku would do is that he would drop off Tokoyami and what's it called, Shinso, or Shoji, I mean, and he would proceed to fight Moonfish because Todoroki and Bakugo weren't really able to use their full power because of the kind of trees around, and that would start a fire. So since Deku's has a lot more physical attacks, and he has lightning, which his metal teeth would make it a perfect lightning rod. And this is what Deku would do. He would shoot lightning at Moonfish, and his metal teeth would attract it, shocking him. And then Deku would kind of finish it off by doing a very strong punch to the face, right? And this would knock out Moonfish. This is after they were done like fighting Moonfish. They would know the situation, and Deku would basically say like, all right, let's take care of the other villains and try to help anyone who needs to be saved. So as they're doing this is when Mr. Compress would come, and he wouldn't be able to kind of get Deku because he'd be in the front of the group. So he would take Tokoyami and Bakugo, just how he does in the series, but not really as his like goal to take him. He just wants to get him out of the way to kind of get closer to Deku, right? And he might, want to kill him as well, or maybe take him back to kind of brainwash him. So Deku and Todoroki would notice that both of them or those two have gone somewhere, and they would see Mr. Compress. And it would kind of be the same chase that they do before, because Mr. Compress wants to get him closer to Darby and Switch and Toga, right? To kind of have more help because his quirk isn't really physical based. And the chase goes on a little bit, not too long, but Mr. Compress still gets away by turning himself into a kind of marble as well, and he would just basically fall to the ground and go into the tree, and Deku would not be able to kind of find him. And so Deku uses his kind of enhanced senses. I believe this is one of the abilities I gave him during the USJ. I asked you guys like, what kind of quirk do you want? Do you want like a quirk that like enhances like senses and things like that, or water control? And you guys said senses, I believe. And he would basically use this quirk that he hasn't really used before because he never had a good opportunity to use it. And he would basically, this is when he'd be able to find where he's at, and the chase would kind of continue until they get to the point where they're at like Dobby, I believe it's called, and Switch and Toga would be there. And I think the way that Toga would escape would be Switch and the other two, Switch and Darby, could come and like help her. I don't think that's how it happened in canon. I don't remember too much, but yeah, basically they would have this kind of three-way fight between Deku, Todoroki, Shinso, and Mr. Compress, Dobby, and Switch, right? So their plan is to kill Deku, so that's what they would try to do first, right? So Dobby would try to use his flames on Deku, but Todoroki would be able to use his ice to kind of block it, but then Switch would use his kind of like wire that he uses to kind of cut the ice, and Toga would be there to kind of to try to like stab him, things like that. So eventually, as this is going down, they would see that there's not really a way to win this, so they're just thinking of like, all right, let's just take the kids and leave. And Mr. Compress is like, all right, let's do that. And they're about to go into the gateways, and this is when Shinso would come through, because earlier he would be fighting against he would be helping Mandolin and Tiger fight off the kind of other two villains that were there, and he would basically use he would go up to Mr. Compress and kind of like slice him a bit, like a little cut, right? And Mr. Compress would be like, what the heck did you just do? And this was when he would basically consume the blood, and he would tell him, he would basically tell him to give him back the students, which Mr. Compress would do. And this is when Dobby would be like, what are you doing? That's not part of our plan. Are you some sort of traitor? And he would shake him. And this is when Mr. Compress was like, what just happened? Right? And Dobby was like, never mind that, let's just leave. And that's when they kind of escape, right? So I'm going to end it here. And in the next part, we'll go over the kind of fight with All For One. So yeah. Basically, sorry this took a long time to get out. But, I just don't want to use up all my spare time just rewatching the anime. I hope you guys can understand that. But yeah. Soon I'm going to try to do the prototype and kind of finish up this and prototype as a series, like I said before. So yeah, just remember to like, comment, and subscribe. So with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. So yeah.